part of it in '93 was a pretty special sort of time. I remember sitting on the plane and asking Merv, what's an Ashes tour like, Merv? And he said, well, put it this way, there's rest days in the test matches, England are rubbish, and we're sponsored by Forex, so they're pretty good. And I went, okay, should be a pretty good trip then. So I remember the Worcestershire game leading up to the first test match, Alan Border had told me, look, just bowl leg breaks to Graham Hick and a few of the guys on their side because they could be in the Ashes, they're a big player in the Ashes. We don't want them to see too much of you. I went, oh, okay, no worries. Well, anyway, he made 206, I think it was 206, he made 200, hit 13 sixes off my bowling. So by the time I got to the first test match, I don't know, my confidence was that great. But to get selected that first test match was special.
There was a bit of hype about this young blonde leg spinner. He'd played reasonably well against the West Indies in the previous series in Australia. So leading into the Ashes, there's a lot of talk about Warne and the impact he'd have in this Ashes series. So yeah, there's a lot of hype around him. There's a lot of media interest, etc. So I was trying to keep him under wraps as far as how many games he'd played, what he did when he was bowling. I can remember a game down in Worcester, one of the lead-up games. I just said to him, just don't give anything away. Just bowl sort of loopy leg spinners, just to get your rhythms going, that sort of thing, and don't show the opposition too much. Warnie was getting a bit frustrated because he just wasn't getting the returns that he wanted as far as getting wickets, but it didn't really matter as far as I was concerned. He was just really itching to go and really show the full bag of tricks that we knew he had at his disposal, but it was more just getting him into a rhythm and then unleashing him once we got into that first test match.
I was very lucky that AB was a fantastic captain. Him and Mark Taylor are the two best captains I played under, easily. But AB, the way he did it, he was an experienced player, so I suppose if AB wants to take all the credit for that, I'm happy to give it to him because he was such a great guy and he's a good mate. So well done, Abe, it was all you, mate.
Well, it's just amazing how things pan out from that point.
We were racing along and we got to about 80 for naught before the first wicket fell, and it must have been about, I suppose, 35, 40 minutes before tea time, so I trudged out there and Gucci was out in the middle. And we were batting on our merry way, and I'd got off the mark. I was 4 or so, I think, and it was approaching tea time. And I think Alan Border thought it was time to introduce a young leg spinner they had brought over with them, and we hadn't seen much of Warnie. We'd seen a few clips, and obviously bowled in a couple of test matches, I think India and West Indies maybe, and played in a couple of matches there. And hadn't done that well. We knew he had a good leg break, which actually spun quite a bit, and apparently bowled a good flipper. But in those days, you couldn't find any footage at all, but you can now, though.
The game was running its normal course, but we weren't having a lot of effect on England batting. So it was, the conversation with Warnie, okay mate, good luck. I knew it was his first test match in England. Mike Gadding was on strike, and so we started to set the field. So the conversation was more about getting the field just right. He's a very good player of spin bowling, Mike Gadding, so it's just important to get things just right.
I was a bit nervous actually. So my thought process was just try and get your rhythm up first, try and spin a couple of big leg breaks first to get inside their head that the wicket's turning.
Even back in '93, he just had that inner confidence about himself, and he just loved that big stage. So he was nervous, no doubt about that, but it wasn't obvious, like you see some guys playing their first games, particularly in England, you can see it on their faces, not so much with Warnie. I just took up my position at short cover, just a pretty regulation sort of field, and Warnie bowls this incredible delivery.
First ball in Test cricket in England for Shane Warne. He's done it. He started off with the most beautiful delivery. Gadding has absolutely no idea what has happened to it. He still doesn't know.
I just remember walking in and bowling, and as soon as it released out of my hand, I just felt, it felt really good. And I wasn't sure, I didn't know what was going to happen.
I'd got my front leg out the way, so I wasn't going to get, I could actually get at the ball, and just looking just to knock it back down the pitch, or if it didn't turn, I'd just got my leg stump covered. So, but to see it sort of spin from outside leg and went right across me, I'm quite a wide chap as well, and for it to actually, say, just hit the bail.
Look at that ball.
He couldn't have run down the wicket and put it in a better place, and to make it spin so much.
I didn't realise, I don't think, until we looked up at the screen, because I think that was the first series, the big screens were at the ground. I mean, it was 20 years ago. And I remember we were all standing in the middle saying, geez, that was a pretty good one. I said, it felt good. And we looked up and then looked at it and went, geez. And then I started feeling pretty good after that, because it was a pretty good cherry.
Mike Gatting, one of the better players of spin bowling in the world. The ball pitches well outside leg stump.
The reason I stood there wasn't because I was shocked at the ball so much, is that I didn't hear anything. Normally you hear the ball hit the stumps, but it didn't. It just sort of lifted the off bail off. And Ian Healy was down the leg side too, and when I looked around I saw the bail on the floor, I thought Heels must have probably knocked the bail off as he was trying to get back to the offside to get where the ball was going to go. No, he then asked me nicely if I'd like to leave, because I was out in that Australian way. I just said, I just looked really sort of, I did look with me because a magnificent ball, but as I say, I thought it had missed everything.
I had no real comprehension of how good that delivery was. The boys started to talk about it, obviously in the huddle, about, oh, that was a fantastic start, Warnie, pitched outside leg, hit off, doesn't get much better than that. That sort of conversation out in the middle, but I didn't really get a real sense for how good it actually was until later, when we had the break. I think it was lunchtime. Warnie had taken a couple of wickets by then, and we saw some footage of that first delivery, and the commentators were all going on about it by this point. And then I realised that is a pretty special way to start your test match career off in England. Yeah, it's just, we've seen it time and time again. We'll never get sick of it either. It's just a brilliant moment.
The whole Gatting ball thing, I suppose everyone's said it's the ball of the century, etc., which is, it's a pretty proud sort of thing. And every time I hear someone say it or look at it, one of the highlight of sporting things, and you see that happen, it's sort of pretty cool and makes me feel pretty humble about how lucky I was to be in that thing and how lucky it was to happen. He could have easily missed it, or could have nicked it and missed it and never happened, and I never did it again. So it just shows you it really was a fluke, and I think it was meant to be.
All I thought at the time and after the series finished, I hope this bloke doesn't only get 17 test wickets and I'm one of them with a ball like that, I'll be really unhappy. The fact that he got something like 705 or something, I don't feel so bad. And the fact that he's probably been crowned quite rightly, probably the best spinner ever in test cricket. So you don't mind so much then.
I don't feel sorry for Mike Gatting one bit, actually. He's a wonderful player, he's a good player, and he's a good bloke. And afterwards we had a beer and just said, I said to him, what happened? And he said, I missed it. I said, yeah, well, didn't really spin that far, mate, so next time try and do a bit better.
Whenever I see Gat, I give him a bit of a hard time. Because he's copped a lot of grief over it over the years, because guys will say, well, if it was a hamburger bowled at your Gat, you wouldn't have missed that, that's for sure, because he's a fairly rotund fella. So he cops a bit of stick about that particular delivery, his part in making it history. But he was a fine player, and that's why it is such a good delivery, because we're talking about one of the better players going around at that time of spin bowling.
Had he bowled a sort of a long up and I smashed it before, one wonders what it might have happened, but it wasn't to be. He bowled a ball that was had people in my dressing room certainly sitting around the tea table watching it at tea time, and it was one of those sort of things that possibly changed the series. There are lots of bits of folklore, and to be part of it is always a pleasure, because that's what we all wanted to be, a part of Australia, England, Ashes series, and you wanted to make an impact. Not sure I wanted to make it quite like that, but hopefully there's one or two other things like winning the Ashes down there that somebody might remember occasionally. But it's nice, it's one of those lovely things to be a part of it.